Hi, you're living on a rock floating in space. Pretty cool, right? About 4 billion years ago, this weird rock we live on had its first organism, prokaryote. Unlike modern-day humans, it couldn't walk, speak, or binge-watch Netflix movies on lonely Friday nights. But one thing it sure could do was reproduce by cloning itself a bunch. Like that. Now today, we have these weird monkeys that can walk, talk, use thumbs, and play video games. Clearly there's a large contrast between these two, and it begs the question, how on earth did we get from here to here? If we trace all the way back to 4 billion years ago when the world wasn't full of monkeys who send cars into space, we can zoom into prokaryotes to find the strain that governs the entirety of a cell's function, DNA. DNA is a collection of chemicals that goes, hey, make his eyes blue, or hey, make him disappoint his parents as he grows up. Every now and then, DNA does this thing called mutation, where it changes a chemical and it ends up altering the function of the cell. Okay, cool. So now you have a weird cell that likes to clone itself a bunch with instructions that get altered every once in a while. Big deal, am I right? Mutations can be good or bad depending on the circumstance, and the mutations which are kept go through this filter we like to call natural selection. To put it simply, if the gene helps the organism survive, it gets passed on to offspring who can use the trait to survive as well, and the gene spreads through the rest of the species too. This is Daniel, and right next to him is his friend Johnny. Daniel over here has a special trait that lets him live longer without very much food, while Johnny is painfully average, much like the majority of teenagers at this school. One day, Daniel was frolicking through the ocean floor, and so was Johnny. Johnny died of starvation. This happened several times throughout history, and all we had left were a bunch of Daniels. Thanks to all these Daniels that were still alive, his species now has the ability to live longer and reproduce so that the trait can be passed on. More and more of these mutations began to take place, but if mutations are supposed to benefit the species, then why isn't there just one singular species on Earth? Well, one day, Daniel and his friend, we'll call him Mr. Toguchi, got into a huge argument, and Daniel got fed up and left Mr. Toguchi. So, Daniel swam all the way to Africa, and Mr. Toguchi stayed in Australia. The two lived in vastly different climates, and each had to live against their own challenges, such as climate barriers and reproduction barriers, which resulted in even more mutation and natural selection. Over time, both became so different from each other that they weren't even the same species anymore. Over the span of 4.5 billion years, different species began to take shape. Huge amounts of mutations over time led to the creations of fish. Fish led to amphibians, amphibians led to reptiles, reptiles led to mammals, mammals led to primates, and primates led to humans. Humans have clearly changed from what they were once before, with the power to impact the entire Earth. I mean, look at us. I don't recall prokaryotes ever creating nuclear weapons and destroying Japan. Anyway, my point is that little changes in DNA over billions of years can create weird stuff, like walking pieces of flesh who consistently complain about how much homework they have. They've become much more clever, created philosophical concepts, and have changed the entire world countless times. And all of this comes from mutations from a single prokaryote.